guys, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to the Wandering Reader. Today I'm going to be doing my April wrap up, and I read 12 books in April, which I was really pleased about. I am back on track with my reading goal for the year, and I feel like I'm back on track with reading more than I have been, and kind of having a direction with my reading and things like that, which I just feel so much better about. So yeah, the power of readathons, because yeah, I feel great about my reading at the moment. So to save this video being super long, we're just going to jump into what I read this month. So the first book that I picked up in April was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have a full review of this on my channel, which I'll link in the cards for you. I really liked this book. This book basically follows a band called Daisy Jones and the Six, and it's told in an interview format where each of the members of the band are reminiscing on what happened when they made this particularly prolific album in the career of the band, and about Daisy Jones joining the band and all of that kind of stuff. And it was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I liked the interview format. Sorry, I've just dropped my notebook. I liked the interview format. I thought the characters were really realistic, and it was just really interesting reading about the process of making an album and the sort of thing that was involved in that. I didn't quite enjoy it as much as I did The Seven Husbands of Evelyn and Hugo, but I still thought it was very, very enjoyable. And I gave this one 4 stars. Next up, I listened to on audio The One and Only Ivan by Catherine Applegate. I recently signed up for a free trial of Scribd, and I listened to it through the Scribd service. I will. There's a link in the description box below if you would also like to sign up for Scribd, and if you use that link, then I get a month free. So just putting it out there. So yeah, I listened to this. This was about a 4-hour audiobook or something like that. This is basically a middle grade book about following a gorilla called Ivan, and he works that word in a sort of like shopping mall type zoo or circus. I don't really know how to describe it. But so at the beginning of the book, it kind of talks to you about what his life is like at that particular moment, what he has to do, the people and the other animals that he's surrounded by and things like that. And it's a really charming story, but it's also a story to make you think. I really enjoyed it. There are some quite emotional moments in it. I didn't cry or anything like that, but I did find it really, really sweet, but also, yeah, really, really pensive. So this is a book that I am considering buying for my nephews, just because, yeah, I think it's an important book that kids should read, basically. I like to listen to it on audiobook. I did have a physical copy of the book out from the library, and I've heard that it's told in verse. That didn't really come across to me in the audiobook. Perhaps it would a little bit more if I read it in physical form, but I don't think I particularly missed out on anything in that kind of sense. I still thought it packed a real punch. So yeah, really enjoyed that one, and I gave that one 4 stars. I've had to mess around with the lighting because the sun it's been shining all afternoon, and then I sit down to film and it decides that he wants to go behind some clouds and then mess around with how my video looks. So anyway, moving on from there. The third book that I read in April was My Sister the Serial Killer by Owen Kine-Braithwaite. This was longlisted, I believe, for the Women's Prize for this year. And this is described as a thriller, although I don't really think it is a thriller. I think this is one of those instances where it's quite hard to categorise this book, and I don't really agree with the way that it's been marketed. This is basically a story about 2 sisters, so I've forgotten their names. So you've got Coredi and then her sister Eula. You know from the very beginning of the book that Eula is a serial killer basically, and Coruddy spends her life basically cleaning up after her sister and protecting her. I didn't really know what to make of this one. I quite liked the writing, and I thought the characters were really well written, and I enjoyed the story, although I wouldn't say that you should go into this one expecting a sort of really twisty turny spectacular storyline. I think it's more about the characters and their situation and sort of reflecting on different things like that. So yeah, this was quite a quick read as well. You can see it's quite short. I think it's just over 200 pages, yeah. So yeah, I had a couple of booktubers say to me that you know, I should read this in 1 or 2 sittings, and I didn't spend long reading this, like a couple of days, and that was it. And I liked it in the end. Yeah, I don't really know how to feel about it. I think in the end I gave it 3.5 stars, because I did think the writing was really good. I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the setting, I enjoyed reflecting on this type of sort of very weird scenario. And the idea of, you know, how far is too far when it comes to sort of like protecting your loved ones and things like that. Yeah, so enjoyed it somewhat, 3.5 stars. Next up on my Kindle, I read Christie's Great Idea by Anne M. Martin. This is the first book in the Babysitters Club series, and I basically read this for nostalgia purposes. I loved this series as a kid. I remember having lots and lots of the books. I've got this vision in my head of all of these books on a particular shelf in my bedroom. I didn't have all of them, and I don't remember ever completing the series. But I really liked them as a kid, and both Karen from Rather Be Reading and Sarah from Steeped in Books have read the series, have been reading the series recently, and it sort of made me want to pick one of them up. I couldn't get them from the library or sort of on my library's Kindle service or anything like that, so I decided to pick it up on Kindle. And yeah, it was an interesting experience. It was nice going back and rereading something that was so beloved in your childhood. If you don't know, this is a children's book series about a group of friends in America who are sort of around 11, 12, 13, I think, and they start a babysitters club, and yeah, it's all about all their adventures as babysitters basically. So the first book is them setting up the club, and yeah, it was a nice experience going back and, like I said, reading something that I loved so much in my childhood. But obviously as an adult you read it in a completely different way, and I didn't particularly like the writing, and I don't know, it was almost a bit too childish. Like, you pick up some children's books and I find that I can get on with them quite well as an adult, and appreciate also how a child would enjoy it. But with this particular series, I kind of felt like my appreciation for it was lowered, because obviously I was reading it as an adult and it didn't work for me the same way as an adult. And yeah, I was sort of thinking, oh, that, you know, should I reread this series sort of thing, and I don't think I'm going to. You know, I enjoyed it for what it was, but I won't be continuing on again. I gave that one 3 stars. Next up on my Kindle, I picked up Royally Screwed by Emma Chase. This is the first book in a series. I can't remember what series it is, just bear with me for a second. Oh, it's the Royally series. So I was having a browse through my Kindle. I got a new Kindle Fire this month, so I was sort of reinvigorated to read off of my Kindle, and this was one I'd had kicking around on there for a little while, so I picked it up. I mean, you know, the cover is great, and yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. I've never read anything by Emma Chase before, but I loved her writing. This is basically the story of Prince Nicholas, who's the crowned prince love Wesco. The sun's coming back again and I'm just like completely washed out. Hold on a second. Yeah, this tells the story of Prince Nicholas, who's the crown prince of this province called Wesco, which is supposed to be in Scotland somewhere, and he's being sort of harassed by his grandmother, who's currently queen, to get married. And so she sort of gives him a bit of an ultimatum at the beginning of the book and says, you know, you've got 6 weeks or something like that, and you need to get married. Meanwhile, his brother's sort of gone missing. He recently came out of the army and he's gone missing, and so Nicholas goes to track him down in New York. When he gets to New York, he gets quite drunk on the first evening and decides to you know, go into this cafe with like his assistant or bodyguard or something kind of along those lines, and Olivia is working in this cafe. Her family own this cafe in New York, and the two of them strike up a conversation. He's quite rude to her and propositions her when he first meets her and stuff like that, but it's about the relationship between the two of them. And I absolutely loved it. Great romance novel. I would love to read more stuff by Emma Chase. I've got a couple of her other books I think on my Kindle, not the second book in the series, that's on my wish list. But great romance writing. It was really quite spicy at times, but it also had a really good storyline to it, which I appreciated. I like reading about royalty. That was a really good experience. So yeah, overall really enjoyed it, and I gave that one 4 stars. Next up, again on my Kindle, I read Risky Play by Rachel Van Dicken. I picked this one up because I got an ARC from NetGalley of the second book in this series. I think it's called the Red Card series, and so I wanted to obviously start from the beginning, you know, to really kind of get a true sense of what my review should be for the second one. This is a romance, a contemporary romance novel. It's set in America. It follows a woman called Mackenzie, who, it's been a couple of years, but I think it's been a couple of years, or maybe it's been less than that. She was kind of left at the altar by her sort of like childhood sweetheart, as it were, and so she's been away from her job for a little while. Her family own a vineyard and she does a lot of sort of like the marketing and stuff like that for the vineyard. She's been away from that for a little while because her ex-fiance also works in the family business, and she decides, I don't think it's not been 2 years actually, it's been a lot less than that, because she decides that she was supposed to go on honeymoon, I think somewhere like, I want to say somewhere like Mexico, and she decides she's just going to go on her own. And on the plane on the way there, she meets someone called Slade, and there's a moment where one of the plane's engines fails, so they have a bit of a bumpy landing, and she gets really scared, so she almost like, I don't know, jumps him sort of thing, and they have this, they both happen to be staying in the same hotel in Mexico, and they have this bit of a fling for just one night. And then Slade gets this phone call to say that his father's died, or he's had a heart attack, and yeah, he's had a heart attack and died. So he flies back home and sort of leaves Mackenzie. Neither of them tell each other who they are, because Slade's a pro soccer star, and Mackenzie's obviously family is very rich and they own this vineyard, and she's been in the media for this terrible thing that happened to her on her wedding day and things like that. And then when she gets back from Mexico, she takes this job of cleaning in somebody's house and looking after their dog, and of course it happens to be Slade, and it's the relationship between the two of them. I've really enjoyed this one. Again, I thought it had a really engaging storyline to it. I thought the characters were great. I thought Slade was a bit sort of like arrogant and nasty at the beginning, unnecessarily, but he, well, I don't know, you'd say he was grieving and all of that kind of stuff, but yeah, this was really good. Again, great contemporary romance. Really enjoyed it. And I will definitely again read lots more by Rachel van Dicken, and I gave that one 4 stars. Next up, I completed It's Not About the Burqa. These are a series of essays that are edited by Mariam Khan, but the I can't remember what the subtitle is of this. Does it say it on the inside? Yeah, Muslim Women on Faith, Feminism, Sexuality and Race. So I buddy read this with Emma from Emma's Bookish Lifestyle. I'll leave a link to her channel down below. I bought a copy of this when we went on the BookTuber meetup, and she also had a copy, so we said, you know, we'd read it together. We read a couple of essays a day, and you know, it's, as it says, that it's a series of essays on Muslim women's experiences of living in the West today. So you've got lots of different issues that are covered in here. The idea of being black and being Muslim, the idea of wearing a burqa, the idea of you know, expectations of Muslim women, what they should be wearing, should, you know, stereotypically, about marriage, about sex, you know, about, you know, feminism and being Muslim and all of those kinds of things. And this was absolutely fascinating. I would definitely recommend it. I think it's just so important. Collections like this are so important for everybody to read, in terms of, you know, making sure that you are reading about other people's experiences who are not like your, you know, who are not the same as you, basically, you know, and making sure that you're not ignorant in that kind of way. These were not really, there was the odd one that felt a lot more academic and a bit more wordy, but overall they were extremely readable, really interesting, and yeah, I loved the reading experience of this, so of course I had to give it 5 stars. The next book that I read was Kicking It by Rachel van Dicken, and this is the second book in the Red Card series. So this is the arc that I'd got off of NetGalley, so thank you very much to the publishers for sending this to me. So this continues on. So it was a good idea for me to read the first book, and I would definitely recommend doing that. This follows 2 characters, it follows a character who you do meet in book 1, so you kind of get that continuation on. You do learn about the characters in book 1, you know, whilst things are going on with the characters in book 2. So I would definitely recommend reading them in order. This follows Matt, who's a soccer agent. In fact, he's Slade's soccer agent. And a woman called Parker, who wants to play professional soccer, you know, professional women's soccer, and she needs a new agent, and I think Matt's sister, who I can't remember the name of off the top of my head, is friends with her, and she's coming to kind of intern with Matt for a while because she wants to kind of get into the agent business, and so she kind of brings Parker along, and Matt agrees to be her agent, and he agrees to train her because she hasn't been playing for a little while and stuff like that, and it's about the relationship between the two of them. This one was a lot more emotional in the sense that Parker had some things that had happened to her in her past that could be a little bit triggering to some people, and you know, she had some issues to deal with and things like that. So yeah, it was a lot more emotional from that sort of point of view. Just as spicy as book 1. The one thing that I didn't like about this book was that there was a bit of an age gap between Matt and Parker, but nothing significant. So Matt had just turned 30, and I think Parker was 22, nearly 23, and they kept making reference to this age gap between them. And from my point of view, when you're an adult and they are both adults, that sort of age difference doesn't matter. Even if it was a lot bigger than that, it wouldn't matter. If she was like 17 or 18, then it would matter, but she's not. She's in her early 20s. She's a a fully fledged adult. She can make her own decisions. You know, when you get to that sort of age, the numbers don't really matter anymore. So, and there kept being these references to the fact that he was a lot older than her, and you know, he was getting on in age and things like that. And I was like, so I'm 34 and I don't consider myself to be old. So can we stop labelling characters who are over 30 as old, because we're not. So that annoyed me a little bit. But overall, again, I really enjoyed the story. I would definitely recommend it. This is coming out on the 11th of June. So you've got a little while to wait, just over a month to wait. But again, I've really enjoyed this series. I'd definitely pick up the first one if you're a contemporary romance fan. And, you know, if you enjoy the first one, then look out for the second one. The next book that I finished in April was The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. This is Nicola Yoon's second book, I think. I read her first book a couple of years ago now, and I quite enjoyed that one. This one is a contemporary YA book, and it follows Natasha and Daniel during one day in New York. They meet in the morning. Natasha is trying to sort out the fact that her family are going to be deported back to Jamaica, so she's kind of on a mission to see whether you know, they've got to fly home that evening, so she's on a mission to see whether she can stop that from happening. And the two of them meet in the morning, and it's about this little sort of romance that forms between them. Going into this, I didn't know whether I was going to like it, because, you know, falling in love with somebody in one day, it's sort of a bit insta-lovey, and I wasn't too sure about that. And I would say I was more sure about it as I was reading it. So Nicola Yoon did a good job of convincing me of their relationship, but I wasn't totally convinced by it. It took me quite a while to get into it, so it's not a particularly long book, and it's YA contemporary, it's easy reading, but I kind of felt like it wasn't until the 150 page mark that I really started to kind of barrel through it in that kind of sense. You get chapters from Daniel's perspective, chapters from Natasha's perspective, but you also get chapters from sort of people around them, including very, very minor characters, and then chapters where you get sort of like explanations of things. So for example, this is quite early on in the book. This is Erie, an etymological history, and there's different things like that in it. So what else can I see in here? Just Donald Christensen and History of Money, Half-Life, A History of Decay, and it's got, and a lot of those are very science orientated, and I suppose that's linked to the idea that Natasha is really passionate about science in here. I quite liked the story. I don't think I liked it as much as Everything, but it was good for what it was. I appreciated most of it in the end. You know, it was enjoyable. I gave it 3.5 stars. Then on audio, I finished listening to City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. This was a reread for me. I'd read this physical copy of the book a few years ago now, quite a while ago now, and I'd never continued on in the series, and my library has all of the Mortal Instruments and most of the other books in the sort of surrounding series as well, so I thought it was worthwhile sort of rereading and then continuing on. This is a YA sort of fantasy series, and it follows a girl called Clary who at the beginning of the book notices that she can see these people that her friend can't, and it's about, you know, these people called shadow hunters basically, and her mother goes missing at the beginning of the book, and it's about, you know, the idea of where's her mother gone and who are these people, and so she gets drawn into the world. I did quite enjoy it. On audio it was very, very enjoyable. I think more enjoyable than, I found it quite a slog to read when I originally read it. It took me a couple of months to read it, I think, but on audio it was quite enjoyable actually, and so it has made me excited to continue on, and I gave that 3.5 stars as well. Next up, again on my Kindle, I read Wild on My Mind by Laurel Kerr. This is the first book in the Where the Wild Hearts Are, sorry. This is another contemporary romance book. Again, I picked this up because I got a proof from NetGalley of the second book in the series, and I'm currently reading that at the moment. So of course I wanted to sort of, you know, start the series off properly. So this is, yeah, like I said, another contemporary romance book that is set in a little town called Sagebrush Flats, and there's a zoo in the town, and at the very beginning of the book, a character called Katie discovers that there are some, what are they, puma cubs I think, that have been abandoned by their mother, or that their mother's gone missing, and so obviously if somebody doesn't do something about it, they're going to starve and die. So she calls, I think you pronounce his name Bowie or Bowie, but we're going to go with Bowie, who is in charge of the local zoo and who takes in kind of stray animals and things like that, to come and collect them. And he doesn't realise that she is somebody that he used to bully in school when they were in high school. She very much does though. She knows exactly who he is. He doesn't realise who she is until, you know, a few pages have passed or whatever. And she basically agrees to do some marketing for the zoo and look after the cubs as well, to sort of kind of try and get a bit of revenge on him, and it's about the relationship between the two of them. I wasn't sure about this one. The writing isn't quite as good on this one, and there are some chapters that are told from the perspective of some of the animals in the zoo, and I wasn't convinced of that particular way of structuring the story. I mean, it was light-hearted and fun, but I wasn't convinced by it. But I did really enjoy the story. Again, the characters were fantastic, and it was really well fleshed out and really well developed. And I love zoos. There's something about animals and zoos that really appeal to me. So the idea of a romance series being set around the idea of a zoo really appealed to me. So yeah, I would recommend that one, and I gave that one 3.5 stars. Okay, and finally the last book that I read in April was Bought the Greek's Mistress? The Greek's Innocent Mistress, or The Greek's Innocent Virgin, sorry, by Sarah Morgan. This is one of her backlist books. You guys know that I've been working through her back catalogue, and I managed to get this one from my library's ebook service. So this is quite short. I think it's just over 200 pages, so it's quite quick to read. And this is basically about Chantel and Angelos, and Angelos is like this really rich Greek tycoon sort of thing, and the two of them meet at some sort of ball, and Chantel's not supposed to be there, so she's like, you know, she's there and she's not supposed to be, and you know, he doesn't really know who she is, and he's really surprised that she doesn't know who he is. And it's about, you know, them meeting and stuff like that. This one was written a little bit better than the two Sarah Morgan books that I mentioned last month, but it wasn't that much better. Yeah, and there were lots of cliches in here, and lots of moments where I really didn't like Angelos. He was just throwing his weight around left, right and centre, and you needed a good slap basically. Yeah, but you know, I do still enjoy making my way through her writing. I gave this one 3 stars in the end. In the end I thought it was enjoyable, and the writing, like I said, was marginally better. So yeah, not much more I can say about that. So this video is already really long, but I just wanted to, at the end of the video, go through what OWLs I'd managed to tick off for the month. And as I was writing them out, although I didn't end up reading some of the books that I'd originally put on my TBR, I managed to tick off quite a lot of them. So I thought I'd only ticked off 5, but then when I was looking at how some of the other books on my that I'd read match up with some of the challenges, actually I completed all of them apart from 2. So I'm going to go through with you now which ones that I completed and what books I used for them. So first one I completed was Arithmancy, a work written by more than one writer, so that I used, it's not about the burqa for that. Then Astronomy, a book with a star in the title, so that was The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. Care of Magical Creatures, a land animal on the cover, and I read The One and Only Ivan. Muggle Studies, a contemporary book, I read My Sister the Serial Killer. Transfiguration, a book with sprayed edges or a red cover, I read Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So that's kind of where I thought I'd finished, but actually went back and I got some more. So I managed to complete Charms, which was to read an adult work, and I think, what did I put down for that? Royally Screwed by Emma Chase. Then I completed Defence Against the Dark Arts, a title that starts with an Ask. I used Risky Play by Rachel Van Dicken for that. Herbology, a book with a plant on the cover, and I went for Wild on My Mind by Laurel Kerr. Grass is a plant, right? I went for that. History of Magic, a book published at least 10 years ago. Christie's Great Idea by Anne M. Martin was published, I think, in 1995. And then Potions, read a sequel. Well, that was Kicking It by Rachel Van Dicken, the sequel to Risky Play. So actually the only ones I didn't complete were Ancient Runes, to read a retelling, and Divination, a book set in the future. So I'm actually really happy with that. Yeah, I can't believe that I managed to tick off so many. Like I said, not with the original books that I put on my TBR, but nonetheless I completed them. So I had a very successful reading month in April. This is a very long video, and the sun has not been my friend at all during this video, so I'm going to apologise about the lighting because it's gone behind a cloud again and now it's raining. So yeah, I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments below. Have you read any of these books that I've talked about? Did you participate in the OWLs Magical Readathon? How did you get on? Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.